James Harrington stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his corner office, 62 stories above Manhattan, watching the city like a king surveying his kingdom. At 58, he wore power like a second skin, custom Italian suit sharp enough to cut glass, silver hair perfectly groomed, gold watch worth more than what most of his employees made in a year. His corner office gleamed with trophies of success, awards for business excellence lined up like dutiful soldiers, photographs with politicians and celebrities displayed to remind visitors exactly who they were dealing with. The mahogany desk, massive and imposing, sat clean except for the latest financial reports showing Meridian Enterprises' record profits. "Mr. Harrington, your 9 o'clock is waiting," his assistant Emma said from the doorway, voice careful, neutral. Even after 5 years, she still approached him like someone might approach an unpredictable animal. James didn't turn. Let them wait. That's why they make appointments with me, not the other way around. Emma nodded and backed out silently. James finally turned, checking his reflection in the polished surface of a nearby award. He straightened his already perfect tie and practiced his smile. Not warm, just enough teeth to suggest civility without promising kindness. The morning routine never varied. The private elevator that bypassed the regular employees. The coffee, single origin Ethiopian, waiting at precisely 167 degrees. The staff meeting where he spoke while others took notes. The emails he dictated rather than typed himself. "Move the Phillips meeting to Thursday," he barked as he strode through the outer office, not bothering to see if Emma was listening. "And tell accounting I need those projections by noon, not end of day. End of day is for people who don't matter." The marketing team scattered as he approached, their easy chatter dying like a candle snuffed out. Only Derek Mitchell, the vice president of sales, dared to fall and step beside him. "Morning, James. Ready for the board presentation?" "I was born ready," James replied, not slowing his pace. "The question is whether the board is ready for me. Third quarter numbers are the best in company history." "About that," Derek said, voice dropping. Some of the junior staff had ideas about profit sharing to boost morale. James stopped so abruptly that Derek nearly collided with him. The hallway fell silent, employees suddenly fascinated by their shoes or phones. "Did I build this company by asking janitors how to run it?" James asked, his voice calm but cutting. "Did I turn Meridian into a Fortune 500 company by taking suggestions from people who couldn't get into Wharton?" A flash of red caught his eye. A maintenance worker quickly turning a corner, pushing a cart of cleaning supplies. James sneered slightly. "Those people," he continued, gesturing in the direction of the retreating worker, "are replaceable parts in the machine. I am the engineer. Never forget the difference." Derek nodded, chastened. James resumed walking, straightening his cuffs as he approached the conference room doors. "Now, let's go remind the board why they pay me $20 million a year while some people here are grateful for $20 an hour." The door swung open, revealing board members rising to greet him. James smiled his practiced smile, completely unaware that the machine he so confidently engineered had already begun to break down around him, or that the replaceable man with the cleaning cart would soon change everything. Miguel Reyes moved through Meridian's gleaming hallways like a ghost, invisible to most despite being in plain sight. At 62, his body carried the quiet strength of a man who had worked hard his entire life. Hands calloused but steady, back straight despite years of bending, eyes clear and observant beneath salt and pepper eyebrows. The night shift suited him. From 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., he polished floors until they gleamed like mirrors, emptied trash cans overflowing with discarded ideas, and wiped away coffee rings from mahogany tables where million-dollar decisions were made hours earlier. The building transformed at night, quiet, honest, stripped of pretense. Miguel pushed his cart past the executive suites, nodding to Diane, the security guard who actually bothered to lure his name. "Evening, Mr. Reyes," she said, smiling. "How's your grandson doing in that science competition?" "Finals next week," Miguel answered, his accent slight but musical. "Eduardo is nervous but prepared. I told him, preparation beats worry every time." Diane nodded. "Smart man. Wish some of the big shots around here understood that." Miguel smiled but said nothing, continuing his rounds. In the CEO's office, he carefully dusted around the awards, noting how they were positioned to be seen from the visitor's chair, a silent reminder of who held power. He emptied the trash can, finding a crumpled report with inadequate scrawled across it in angry red pen. When he reached James Harrington's desk, Miguel paused. A financial magazine lay open, featuring an article about struggling retail chains. Miguel read it carefully, then pulled a small notebook from his pocket and made a few notes. His handwriting was neat, precise, the handwriting of someone who valued clarity. In the executive break room, he found the usual mess: espresso grounds scattered across counters, used paper towels missed a trash can, someone's half-eaten lunch abandoned in the refrigerator despite the "Clean Out Friday" sign. Miguel cleaned methodically, restoring order without complaint. He paused at the bulletin board, studying the company newsletter that most employees ignored. The quarterly profits were up 22%, yet the article on the facing page announced cuts to the cleaning staff and cafeteria hours. Miguel made another note in his book. In the accounting department, a young woman was working late, her desk lamp the only light in the dark office. She jumped when she noticed Miguel. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there," she said, hand over her heart. "No problem, Miss Chun," Miguel replied. "Don't mind me." She blinked, surprised. "You know my name." "You're always kind enough to say hello," he explained. "Not everyone does." She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry about that. People can be. People are busy," Miguel said simply, no judgment in his voice. "I understand." "Still," she insisted, "it's not right." She glanced at the financial reports on her screen, then back at Miguel. "Can I ask you something? Do you like working here?" Miguel considered the question carefully. "I take pride in my work, Miss Chun. A clean space means a clear mind for those who work here. That matters." She nodded slowly, seeming to hear what he wasn't saying. "Well, I appreciate what you do, Mr. Reyes." "Miguel Reyes." "Mr. Reyes." "Thank you." Miguel continued his rounds, the exchange adding another piece to a puzzle no one knew he was solving. In the empty boardroom, he wiped down the long table where tomorrow's meeting would determine futures. His reflection looked back at him from the polished surface, not the hunched figure of a man beaten down by life, but someone patient, watchful, waiting. When he reached the investment library, he spent his break reading the Wall Street Journal and adding more notes to his little book. Anyone passing by might have been struck by how comfortably he handled complex financial terms, how his eyes narrowed at certain market trends, details that would seem odd for a simple janitor. But no one was passing by. No one ever did. And that was exactly why Miguel saw everything. The boardroom buzzed with tension at 9:47 p.m., hours after most employees had gone home. James Harrington paced before a projected graph, his shadow cutting across plummeting red lines. The quarterly report looked strong on paper, but the Asian markets were showing weakness. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Ties loosened, coffee cups empty. "We need decisive action, not hand-wringing," James snapped, slamming his palm on the mahogany table. "I didn't build Meridian by waiting for problems to fix themselves." Derek Mitchell nodded too eagerly. "Absolutely right, James." The room murmured agreement, no one willing to challenge the CEO, whose temper was legend in corporate circles. James continued his presentation, voice cutting through the stale air, unaware of the door quietly opening behind him. Miguel entered with his cleaning cart, eyes down. He'd been told the meeting would end at 9. The room fell silent, executives staring as if a deer had wandered into their hunting lodge. Miguel paused, nodding apologetically. "Sorry to interrupt. I'll come back later." He turned to leave, when James's voice cracked like a whip. "No, stay. Since you're here, you might as well empty the trash. God knows it's overflowing with useless reports." Laughter rippled through the room, nervous and obligatory. Miguel nodded, moving efficiently toward the first bin, his face a careful mask. The meeting resumed, but James's focus had shifted. He watched Miguel with narrowed eyes, a predator sensing weakness. "Tell me," James said suddenly, addressing Miguel but playing to his audience, What would you do about declining Asian market shares? The room went silent again. Miguel looked up, caught in the spotlight of 20 powerful stares. He opened his mouth to respond when James continued. I'm curious what financial insights a man who cleans toilets for a living might offer a Fortune 500 company. More laughter, sharper now. In the corner, Zoe Evans, a young marketing assistant, shifted uncomfortably, her phone resting on her lap beneath the table. Miguel stood straight, his cart forgotten. Sir, No, please. James interrupted, smiling coldly. Enlighten us. Should we diversify? Liquidate assets? Or perhaps you have thoughts on leveraged buyouts? The board members watched, some amused, others uncomfortable but silent. Miguel's eyes betrayed nothing, but his knuckles whitened around the trash bag he held. Everyone has value to contribute, Mr. Harrington, Miguel said quietly, even those you might not see. James's smile hardened. Value. Let me explain value to you. He gestured around the room. These people create billions in wealth. They move markets. What exactly is your contribution to Meridian's bottom line? Making sure the trash doesn't overflow. Miguel stood perfectly still, dignity wrapped around him like armor. I ensure the spaces where important decisions happen are clean and orderly, sir. It's honest work. Honest work, James repeated mockingly. How quaint. Tell me, did you dream of being a janitor when you grew up? Or did you just lack the ambition to become something more? Derek laughed loudly, too loudly. Others joined half-heartedly. A few stared at their hands. In the corner, Zoe's finger tapped her phone screen, recording. Miguel looked directly at James, his gaze level. I believe all work has dignity, Mr. Harrington. The question isn't what job a person holds, but how they treat others while holding it. The simple wisdom hung in the air. James's face flushed, embarrassment turning to anger. Well, since you're so full of wisdom, why don't you give us all a lecture instead of doing your job? Or better yet, why don't you find a job elsewhere? I'm sure the building across the street needs someone to push a broom around. He turned to Derek. Make a note to speak with the cleaning service company. I want competent people who understand their place, not philosophers with mops. Miguel nodded once, setting down the half-filled trash bag. I understand, sir. I'll finish tomorrow. He walked out, back straight, steps measured. The room felt colder in his absence. Now, James said, clearing his throat. Back to business. But the damage was done. In the corner, Zoe stopped recording and slipped her phone into her pocket, her expression grim. By morning, what happened in that boardroom wouldn't stay there. The clip spread like wildfire, first through company messaging groups, then to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. #MeridianShame trending by lunch. News networks picking it up by dinner. James's sneering face and Miguel's quiet dignity playing on repeat across America. The stock dropped 12 points before trading closed. The board's phones rang constantly. By midnight, an emergency meeting had been called, and James Harrington's reign was coming to an end. James Harrington stood in his living room, scotch in hand, watching his own face on the 85-inch television. The news anchor's voice felt like salt in an open wound. In what many are calling a textbook example of corporate arrogance, Meridian Enterprises CEO James Harrington was terminated today, following viral footage of him berating a janitor. The company's stock has fallen 17% since the video emerged 3 days ago. He hurled the crystal tumbler at the wall, where it shattered with a satisfying crash. 17 years building Meridian, and they tossed him aside like yesterday's trash. All because he'd spoken harshly to some cleaning man who didn't know his place. His phone buzzed. Another call from Derek, no doubt. He'd ignored the first 6. What could Derek possibly say? Sorry they fired you while I kept my job? Sorry I laughed at your jokes until they became inconvenient? The penthouse felt suddenly too large, too empty. $12 million of premium Manhattan real estate, and nowhere to be Monday morning. No assistant bringing coffee. No board hanging on his words. No employees scattering like mice when he walked the halls. His wife Patricia entered, her face a mask of controlled fury. Your financial advisor called. Again. James grunted, pouring another drink. He says with the stock options frozen and the severance package under review, we need to consider our position. Her voice dripped with disdain. 20 years I've spent as the perfect corporate wife, and now we need to consider our position. It's temporary, James muttered. Dawson at Global Communications has already declined to meet. Patricia interrupted, as has Forrester Group and Trinity Partners. She dropped a magazine on the coffee table. You're toxic, James. Nobody wants to touch you. The magazine cover showed Miguel's face beside James's. Corporate America's moment of truth blazed across the top. James pushed it away. This will blow over, he insisted. People have short memories. Patricia laughed, a bitter sound. Our friends don't. The Whitmores uninvited us to their gala. The country club is reviewing our membership. She twisted her wedding ring. Even Chelsea's boyfriend's parents suddenly don't want their son associated with the controversy. James felt the ground shifting beneath him. The Whitmores, the club, his daughter's happiness. The next weeks blurred together. Calls unreturned. Lunch invitations evaporated. Former colleagues crossing the street to avoid him. His calendar, once packed with meetings that determined the fate of billions, now stretched empty before him. The silence of his days roared in his ears. The first real jolt came when Patricia insisted they let Maria, their housekeeper of 12 years, go. We can't afford the staff anymore, she explained coldly. Don't be ridiculous, James snapped. We have millions. Had, Patricia corrected. The penthouse mortgage is 7 figures annually. The Hamptons house is another fortune. Both children's trust funds, the boats, the cars. Without your income. The reality hit like a physical blow. He was James Harrington. He wasn't supposed to worry about money like common people. Maria hugged Patricia goodbye, her eyes damp. She didn't look at James. The second blow came when Harrison Wilkes, his golfing partner of 10 years, walked past him at the club without acknowledgement. Harrison. James called out. The man turned slowly, glancing around as if checking who might see them talking. James, he said flatly. Didn't expect to see you here. Why wouldn't I be here? James asked, forcing a laugh. Harrison's eyes were cold. The board met yesterday. What board? The club board. Harrison adjusted his golf glove. Your membership has been, well, let's call it, suspended pending review. James stared, disbelieving. I donated the money for the new wing. Yes, well. Harrison checked his watch. Times change. The third blow came when an executive recruiter finally took his call, only to deliver brutal honesty. James, I'll be straight with you. No major corporation will touch you right now. That video has 20 million views. You're the poster child for everything wrong with leadership culture. What about overseas? Asia. They respect strength there. The recruiter sighed. The video's global, James. I'd suggest taking a year off, doing some charity work. Maybe write a book about learning humility. James hung up, seething. Humility. He'd built an empire through strength and vision, not by coddling janitors. The final blow came 6 weeks later. Patricia placed real estate listings before him at breakfast. What's this? He asked, though he already knew. We need to sell the penthouse, she said flatly. I've found some adequate apartments uptown. Not our usual neighborhood, but manageable until things turn around. James stared at the listings, at the square footage that was a fraction of their current home, at neighborhoods he'd previously dismissed as beneath him. This is ridiculous, he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. Patricia didn't answer, already scrolling through her phone, researching which of their possessions might fetch decent prices at auction. That night, James stood on his balcony, staring at the city that had once felt like it belonged to him. 62 floors below, people the size of ants went about their lives, unaware of his fall. Among them, perhaps, was a janitor named Miguel, whose dignity had cost James everything. He didn't know yet that the real blow, the one that would shatter his world completely, was still to come. James slouched in a corner booth at Mackey's bar, nursing his third whiskey. Once he'd commanded private rooms at exclusive clubs, now he hid in dim taverns where nobody recognized fallen CEOs. The TV above the bar flickered with financial news, the sound mercifully muted. A familiar face appeared on screen. James squinted, certain the alcohol was playing tricks. But there was no mistake. It was Miguel, the janitor, standing at Meridian's headquarters, looking completely transformed. Gone was the maintenance uniform, replaced by an impeccably tailored suit. The cheer-in beneath him read, Miguel Reyes Donovan named to Meridian board. "Hey," James called to the bartender, voice hoarse with disbelief. "Turn that up." The volume rose, the reporter's voice filling the dingy space. A stunning development at Meridian Enterprises, where Miguel Reyes Donovan has been named to the board of directors. Sources confirm Reyes Donovan is actually the company's largest individual shareholder, having quietly purchased stock for over a decade. James's glass froze halfway to his lips, whiskey sloshing onto his hand unnoticed. The reporter continued, in a twist that has Wall Street buzzing, Reyes Donovan had been working undercover as a janitor for the past 6 months, evaluating company culture from the ground up. The camera cut to Miguel at a press conference, his posture confident, his voice steady. Nothing like the humble janitor James had humiliated. "My father taught me that to truly understand a building, you must know its foundation, not just its penthouse," Miguel explained to the gathered reporters. "For 20 years, I've invested in companies I believe in. But before committing fully to Meridian, I needed to understand its heart. What better way than from the position most often overlooked?" James stumbled out of the bar, phone already in hand. He called Derek, who answered on the 6th ring, voice wary. "What do you want, James?" "The janitor," James hissed, pacing the sidewalk. "Did you know?" A heavy sigh. "We just found out ourselves. The board is in shock." "How is this possible? How did nobody know?" "He's Miguel Reyes Donovan," Derek said, emphasizing the hyphenated surname. "Of Donovan Investments. Worth about $2 billion. Keeps a low profile, but his fund has outperformed Warren Buffett's for the last decade." James leaned against a lamppost, legs suddenly weak. "Donovan Investments owns 15% of Meridian." 17 now, Derek corrected. "He bought more during the dip after the video." The irony was sickening. James had caused the very stock plunge that allowed Miguel to increase his holdings. Why? James demanded. Why work as a janitor when he could have just bought his way onto the board? Derek's laugh was bitter. Apparently, it's how he operates. Works entry-level at every company before making major investments. Says it reveals the true culture, not the one presented in boardrooms. And nobody recognized him. He's notoriously private. No social media. Few photographs. Besides, Derek added pointedly, who looks closely at janitors? The words stung because they were true. James had looked right through Miguel for months, seeing only a function, never a person. "There's more," Derek continued reluctantly. "He's done this before. At Westridge Capital last year. At Pinnacle before that." "Done what?" "The janitor thing. Testing the company's soul, he calls it." Derek paused. Their previous CEOs failed too. James's mind raced through implications. Failed how? Same way you did. Treated staff poorly, created toxic cultures. They were all replaced. The connection ended, leaving James alone on the darkening street, pieces falling into terrible place. His downfall hadn't been bad luck or overreaction. It had been a test, one designed to reveal his character, and he had failed spectacularly. The next morning, James sat in his significantly downsized apartment, scanning every article about Miguel Reyes Donovan he could find. The story was extraordinary. Born to a Filipino mother and Irish-American father, Miguel had inherited his father's small construction company and transformed it into a development empire, then diversified into strategic investments. His philosophy was simple. Businesses were only as strong as their foundations, the people at every level. Before any major investment, he worked anonymously within the company, as janitor, cafeteria worker, security guard. He observed how executives treated those they considered beneath them, believing it revealed their true character. Most damning of all was the pattern. James was the third CEO in 5 years to fail Miguel's test. The others had also been captured on video mistreating staff they thought powerless, only to discover too late who had been watching. James stared at his laptop, at a photo of Miguel calmly addressing Meridian's board, the same board that had once hung on James's every word. The caption noted the company's stock had already recovered, with analysts praising the cultural reset. His phone rang, an unlisted number. He answered warily. "Mr. Harrington," a crisp, professional voice said. "My name is Sandra Liu, assistant to Mr. Reyes Donovan. He would like to meet with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. James's heart raced. For what purpose? Mr. Reyes Donovan prefers to explain himself. The address is 1460 West Harbor Drive. Will you attend? Pride warred with curiosity. Curiosity won. I'll be there. The line went dead, leaving James to wonder what the man he'd humiliated could possibly want from him now. 6 months passed, seasons changing outside the Foundation's windows, while something more profound transformed within James Harrington. The man who once commanded boardrooms from on high now sat beside people from all walks of life, learning lessons his Harvard MBA never taught. His first weeks had been brutal, pride battling humility at every turn. He'd fumbled simple tasks, bristled at gentle corrections, retreated to bathroom stalls to breathe through moments of crushing insignificance. The sharpest pain came from recognition. Occasionally someone would point, whisper, "That's him, the CEO from the video." James would stiffen, then force himself to nod, accepting this new identity, the cautionary tale. But water shapes stone not through force, but through persistence. Day by day, the Foundation's simple rhythms wore away his hardened edges. Morning staff meetings, where everyone's voice carried equal weight. Afternoons helping former executives rewrite resumes, watching them struggle with the same identity crisis he faced. Evenings cleaning up after workshops. Yes, cleaning. The sweet irony not lost on him as he swept floors and wiped down tables, completing the circle that Miguel had designed. Today marked 6 months exactly. James stood before the community room. 20 faces turned toward him. His first time leading a workshop alone. His topic, redefining success. "For 30 years, he began, voice steadier than he felt, "I measured success by what I owned. Who feared me? How high I could climb above others." He gestured to his simple clothes. No designer labels, no status symbols. "I had everything in my grasp, and nothing of real value." A woman in the front row nodded, tears tracking silently down her face. A former marketing VP who'd missed her daughter's childhood chasing promotions. "We're taught to believe power is the goal," James continued. "But real power isn't making people smaller, so you can feel bigger. It's lifting others while standing firmly on solid ground." As he spoke, James caught sight of Miguel in the doorway, listening quietly. Their eyes met briefly, not boss and employee, not billionaire and fallen executive, but two men who understood how easily power corrupts and how hard the journey back becomes. After the workshop, participants lingered, sharing their stories with James. He listened, truly listened, a skill he'd only recently developed. When the room finally emptied, Miguel approached. "Powerful session," he said simply. James shrugged, still uncomfortable with praise. "I just shared what I'm learning." Miguel gestured toward his office. "Walk with me." They moved through the building in companionable silence. James noticed a new family entering, shell-shocked father in an ill-fitting suit, children clutching their mother's hands. The man's eyes held the haunted look of someone whose identity had been stripped away. James recognized it from his own mirror months ago. In Miguel's office, they sat in their usual places, positions that had once symbolized victory and defeat to James, but now felt more like teacher and student. "I have a proposition," Miguel said. "Global Partners has approached us. They want to launch a corporate ethics program, executives spending a week here, learning what you've learned over months." James raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like corporate theater." "It could be," Miguel agreed. "Or it could be the beginning of something meaningful. They asked for you specifically to lead it." "Me?" James's surprise was genuine. "Why?" "Because your story has power. The mighty CEO who lost everything and found something more valuable. They've seen the videos of your workshops. They believe you can reach their leadership in ways consultants can't." James stared out the window, watching Foundation clients enter and exit, each face carrying burdens and hopes. Would I return to corporate life? No, Miguel said firmly. You'd stay here, rooted in this community. They'd come to you, not the other way around. Your value isn't your old title. It's your new perspective. The offer hung between them. 6 months ago, James would have leapt at any chance to reclaim status. Now, he measured opportunities differently. I'll consider it, he said finally. But I'd want to finish developing the mentorship program first. Those kids need consistency. Miguel smiled, a small, satisfied expression. That's exactly why you're ready. That evening, James drove to a modest suburban home. Another journey that measured his transformation. Patricia opened the door, surprise flickering across her face at his unannounced visit. James, she said, neither welcoming nor rejecting. What brings you here? I wanted to see Chelsea before she heads back to college, he said simply. If that's okay. Patricia studied him, noting the absence of designer clothes, the humbler posture, the quieter voice. Something had shifted. She stepped aside. Their daughter sat at the kitchen table, textbooks spread around her. She looked up, wariness immediately replacing surprise. Dad, hey Chels, he said, remaining by the doorway, not assuming welcome. I was hoping we could talk. Just for a few minutes. Chelsea glanced at her mother, who nodded slightly. Okay. James sat across from her, hands clasped to hide their trembling. I've been working at a place called the Second Foundation, he began. I know, Chelsea interrupted. I've followed your journey. James blinked, surprised. You have? She nodded, twisting a pencil between her fingers. Some kids at school posted about you. Said horrible things. James winced but nodded. Probably deserved. That's what I thought too, Chelsea admitted. But then I saw your workshop videos. My videos? The foundation posts them sometimes. I saw the one where you talked about missing my recitals because meetings seemed more important. Her voice caught. You cried. James remembered, a breakthrough moment when he'd finally confronted what his ambition had cost him. I didn't know anyone was recording. Everyone records everything now, Dad. A ghost of a smile. But you meant it. That wasn't for show. No, James agreed softly. It wasn't. They talked for an hour. Really talked, perhaps for the first time. Not about his fall or his new job, but about her studies, her dreams, the person she was becoming while he'd been becoming someone new himself. As he prepared to leave, Chelsea hesitated, then hugged him briefly. Mom says you're different now. I'm trying to be, he answered honestly. Good, she said. The old you was pretty terrible. James laughed, a genuine laugh, free from the bitterness that had colored his first months at the foundation. Yeah, he really was. Driving back to his small apartment, James passed the gleaming skyscrapers downtown, buildings he once conquered, where people still moved papers and money around like it was the only thing that mattered. He felt no pull toward those lights now. At a red light, he glanced at his phone. A text from Miguel. Board approved your mentorship program. Full funding. Your vision, your lead. 6 months ago, those words would have meant nothing. Now they meant everything. The light turned green. James drove on, away from his old kingdom,